That's good. Okay. Good afternoon. Thank you, Shlomo, for inviting me. When I sat down to prepare, I was actually a little bit confused. I'm not sure if this is supposed to be a sikkum of all the Hachanah Shiurim or an introduction for the YYK in Eretz Yisrael. So I'll try to do a little bit of both. Try to summarize the different shitas and different concepts we've learned until now, and hopefully give everyone a little bit of a framework to when they're learning the sugya more in the YYK. Now, one danger whenever you're trying to give any klalim or to summarize something, every rule has exceptions, and the klalim that we're going to go through, as you learn the sugya b'iyun, you will notice will not shtim with every rishon. When you see something that it's not consistent with the klalim, that's something to focus on, to go into, because very often that will be a pesach to the sugya. So the concepts that we've been discussing are the concepts of המהפך בחררה, hasagos gvul, marufya, and ani menakif b'reish hazayis. Now, these four different aspects, I think the way to understand them is, ani mahapach is the most specific. When there's a question about a specific deal, you're about to buy a house. In Shlomo's case, it's in attorney review, and parties are about to close on a specific transaction. That is where you have a question of ani mahapach. When and under what circumstances is it permitted for another party to come in and put in a bid and interfere with the deal? It could be a mekach memkar, it could be a skirus, it can be a job, employment, it could be a sale, but that's ani mahapach, a specific transaction. The other extreme, when we're talking about hasagos gvul, that is the most broad category. A person has a business, and whether it's a pizza shop or a wholesale business, he operates in a certain industry, in a certain field. If another person wants to come and open a competition, and that competition will close down the first person, materially impact him, that already the details you'll learn in the sugya. But that's a question of hasagos gvul, being yord l'chayav, interfering with another yod's parnasa. It's a very broad concept. When you're opening up a competing establishment, you're not necessarily fighting over a specific client. There's no specific house or healthcare facility that one person is about to close on and you're interfering with the transaction. There's nothing specific, it's a cloud. The point is, I make my parnasa by selling whatever goods it is, by owning a pizza shop, whatever my field is. If there's another person trying to earn a living in the same field, in the same area, there may not be enough room for two. It'll impact me and it will hurt me. But that competition, if you will, is a klolistic competition. We're not fighting over one specific person or deal that I'm about to close on. It's the idea that I have someone else providing a similar service. There's a limited amount of business, do a little bit of math, and I will end up with less than I've had earlier. When we deal with the concept of marufya, if you think about it, that's really somewhere in between. A marufya is someone has a steady, loyal client who exclusively does business with a competitor, and you approach that client and try to lure him away, try to convince him to drop your competitor and instead transact with you. Now, on one hand, it's not a specific transaction. It's not a specific deal. It's not like someone's buying. I'm an attorney review on a house, and someone is interfering with that purchase. A marufya is a relationship. It's an ongoing relationship, which you will do business for years. It's entirely possible that the particular marufya is at this moment in time is not trying to buy or sell anything, but there's a relationship there. So on one hand, it's more broad than ani mahapach because we're not fighting over a specific transaction. It's more of it's a relationship. On the other hand, when we compare it to hasagos gvul means that one person has a grinding, whatever they call it, a grinding establishment, a pizza shop, whatever it may be. And a second person wants to open a competing business. Here, in the case of Marufia, we have two people who are competing and buying or selling the same thing. That's water under the bridge. They've been competing for years. We don't even know who was first. The point of Marufia is that within this competition, there's my competitor has a steady client, and I want to take that client for myself. So here it's not a question of me entering into someone's field and opening a competition. That's happened a long time ago. It's also not a question of interfering with a specific purchase, a specific hire, or a specific sale. It's a question of a relationship. So that's why, unsurprisingly, Marufia is the least clear of these halachos. Hamahapech is a halacha mefreshes in Reish Lamed Zayin. Hasagas Gvul is fairly clear in Kuf Nun Vav. Marufia, instant in Kuf Nun Vav, it's brought down. Different shittas in the Ramah. It's not even clear how many shittas there are in the Ramah. But yesh noigim, yesh not noigim. There are different ideas because of this question. It's a hybrid. Now, it's more specific than a regular Hasagas Gvul. It's more kloliistic than a regular Ani Mahapech. It also has a greater impact. Ani Mahapech, we're dealing with a one-time purchase. So good, I'll get it, you'll get it, we'll move on. Marufia, which is a relationship, an ongoing relationship, where they are steadily doing business, that can have much more of an impact, and that's why it's treated a bit differently in halacha. Now, although these concepts, when we talk about them in the abstract, they seem pretty well defined. Specific deal, ani mahapach. Parnasa, hasagos gavol. Relationship, marufia. But the real world is not quite as clean. Things tend to get a little bit messier, and the real world is full of gray. You have a key. There's a key client of your competitor is about to close on a deal, and you want to get involved. You want to buy or sell, whatever the case may be. What is that? So, with respect to the specific facility that they may be selling, if you're trying to go ahead and grab that deal for yourself, you're probably violating Ani Mahapech. If this is a loyal and steady client that has been doing business with your competitor for years, and he's always been buying or selling to that person, and you're trying to get your foot in the door, if you will, so at the same time you have a question of Ani Mahapech, you're also interfering with a marufia. You're interfering with a loyal and close relationship that your competitor has, and you'll have to deal with the second sugar.
Why don't you have a heter or usher? Businesses by definition are usher. Right?
A business, everyone in business is usher. That's beautiful. That's a beautiful concept. Okay, so we talk about usher. You're talking about Ani Mahapech. Right. Okay, fine. Let me just finish this, and then we go back. Then we go back to the specifics, and we'll deal with that. And again, in halacha l'maisa, the case of usher is only in Rashi, which is really only a chumrah. So in practical halacha l'maisa, it's less relevant than you might think. But let me just finish this particular case. Then we'll go into some of the details. Now, at the same time, if this transaction is critical, and if your competitor doesn't get it, he'll be out of business. It may be hasagos gvul as well. And that's why you can have one deal on the table, but really three things are happening. By taking that deal, you're taking a specific deal and that you may be violating on mahapech. By taking this deal, forget about just this deal. What you're trying to do is you're trying to now develop a relationship with this person and lure him away from your competitor. So at the same time, you're likely crossing over the lines and violating the musig of marufia. And if this is a critical client, that your competitor he's the anchor client and anchor tenant, without which your competitor's business is not viable, then you're being yord l'chayev at the same time. So while it's important to from a Havana to understand the neat categories, what we'll find is that any given shaila that comes up, you generally have to go through the detail of each of these sugyas. And you may have a heter that will apply for one sugya. It may not necessarily hold true for a second sugya, and that's one of the complications of this entire sugya. The tshuvos that are discussed cases like this tend to run in the dozens of pages. And the reason is they can't just address one of these shilos. They have to go through each one of these concepts. It does apply, it doesn't apply. And that's one of the challenges. Now, another chiddush, if you will, or something unique about the sugya, is in general, when you deal with chosh and mishpat, things are fairly black and white. If there's a question about a kinyan, something belongs to Reuven or belongs to Shimon. Either the debt exists or it doesn't exist. It's binary, black and white, yes or no. In general, if you have a schus, it's your schus. We don't necessarily have to worry about public good or public policy. What's yours is yours, what's mine is mine. And within reason, we generally look at the person focuses on what he does or doesn't have. When you're dealing with the sugyas of hasagas gvul and yard and hamahapech, it's fundamentally different. It is self-evident you don't own your customers. You don't own your industry. And if you're negotiating over a property, you may hope to own it at some point, but until the deal closes, you don't own it either. So the entire discussion of, I'm about to close on this property, it's hamahapech, it's maruf, it's hasagas gvul, almost by definition is not, I own it, it belongs to me. I have a schus mamoin, therefore you have to stand down. There are all concepts of, it's not mine, I don't own my clients, I don't own my industry, but it's not yasher v'toiv, it's hasagas gvul, you're the chayav. These are all concepts based on yasher v'toiv, or based on protecting or giving you something which you don't really own in chosh mishpat. Now, because of that, the svaras that come up and the gedorim that you have are very different than a typical area of chosh mishpat. If you're dealing with, I own something, with the fact that it's not nice or yasher v'toiv, or there may be some sort of public policy benefit to change things, it's not going to take away my ownership. But if I don't own something, and I really have no inherent financial schusim, but Chazal said it's yasher v'toiv, this person got here first, let him take the deal. In yasher v'toiv, we can negotiate. In yasher v'toiv, there's a benefit for you, but we have to think about what are the costs involved to other people. Are we going out of our way to protect one person and do yasher v'toiv to him while hurting someone else? That can't be done. So in these sugyas, perhaps more than any other sugyas you'll find in chosh mishpat, a lot of the svaras involve just balancing people's rights, or balancing how, if we protect one person, are we hurting another person in a more meaningful way? And these are very unique, again, unique type of svaras and unique type of arguments, because every chumrah is also a kula. Every time we say, ani mahapech, no one's allowed to put in a bid. If you think about it, restricting bids protects the buyer, but it hurts the seller. The more open, the freer the competition is, the greater the sales price will be. And every time we protect a seller, every time we want to say that this person got here first, this is his parnasa, don't interfere, that's going to, in a way, impact and probably hurt all the consumers. There's less competition, which means less choice. And we all know if there's less competition, the prices will be higher, service won't be quite as good, the quality won't be the same. And there's a lot of the discussion and even the machlokes have to do with balancing out, getting it right. What's the appropriate point of yasher v'toiv to protect the person buying, protect the person parnasa, without having too great of an impact and on the public at large. One extreme example of this is, on one hand, we find if someone wants to come from a foreign city, a foreign country, and wants to do business, very often the halacha is the locals could prevent them from coming in. On the other hand, if the person if they're bringing in better wares, better quality, according to some, perhaps it's cheaper, then already we say, no, we can't protect the local businessmen at the expense of all of the local consumers. And therefore, we have to allow the outsider to come in. Now, normal chosh mishpat, you can't do that. An example of this is a famous troop of Chaviro. Chaviro had a case where a person lent money to the Duke. Now, when it came time to collect, he tried to collect the money, and the Duke realized he had no recourse. He borrowed the money. There was a valid a promissory note. He would have to pay, but he told the creditor, "Listen, you want me to pay? You can force me to pay. But if you collect the money that I owe you, I'm going to retaliate against every Jewish subject in my province." Now, the Jewish subjects came to the creditor and said, "You can't do this. We're all going to be hurt by this. So you have no rights, being very selfish, for you to collect your debt when we're all going to pay for it." Zok the Chavos Yair, nothing doing. The creditor says, "I'm owed money. If I'm owed money from the guy, I'm allowed to collect it. Now the Duke will go ahead and he'll retaliate against the people in the town. That's your problem. I don't have to give up money that I am owed because now suddenly 10,000 Jewish citizens have a hostile Duke that they're living under. Move somewhere else. Why is that my issue?" So because in that case, there's a schus mammon. He's owed money. You don't have to give up what you're owed simply because a Duke will retaliate against other people who he has control over. It's only in our sugya where it's not a question of having something and owning something. It's a question of yasher toiv. We can start balancing that if we protect your parnasa, everyone in the city will now have to pay more or now have to deal with substandard quality. There already, it's that type of argument in this circuit will hold water, even though in most other areas, it would not.
But according to the sheets of the YYK and those other sheets, so that seems to imply that there is an economic asset here being taken away.
What in YYK? Okay, good, 100%. So the point over here is not that we side solely with the customers, and the point is not we side solely with protecting people's parnasa. What we're going to see is there's a question of balancing. At what point do we say we want to protect someone's parnasa and therefore no one can come in? Well, at what point do we say no? This cost is too much, and this can't be done. You can't. If it's going to cost the public at large so much, we can't do it. Now, the point that you raise is exactly the example. It brings this out. If you're going to hurt someone else's parnasa, we say first of all, you don't own it. The second person needs parnasa as well. Let's have both people engaged, and that way two people will have shvacha parnasa. That's better than having you protecting your monopoly. We also, the fact that the public at large has a benefit also plays a role. It's only when you get to Pesach Yusuf Legamri, when you're going to destroy someone's parnasa, then Chazal said no. To go ahead and to save everyone a few pennies, but at the expense of putting a family on Tevchei Shabbos, that you can't do. That's too far. That very concept of Pesach Yusuf Legamri being too far but Masha'enkein minimizing his parnasa being okay, also demonstrates we're dealing with a sugya based on Yosher V'Toyev and balancing what Chazal felt was right as opposed to hard, fast ownership or schosei mammon. Now, another example, perhaps the most basic halacha in HaMahapech is that it applies only when there's a piece of dam. If Ruvain is negotiating over a house, Shimon can come in and put in a higher offer. When Ruvain gets to the point where there's a piece of damim, he finalized the negotiations are done. There's a meeting of the minds. All we need to do is paper it over. Everyone knows today getting a hold of an attorney to actually draft a contract can take some time. If it's just the question of time, HaMahapech says no one else can interfere. Until then, there's no din of HaMahapech. Why? Why don't we say if I'm here first, if Ruvain is negotiating first, everyone else should stand down, wait till he's done, find another property, don't interfere with his deal. So there are two reasons. I'll actually start with the secondary reason first. The Nachashivah says, because if all you needed was a conversation, and once you start negotiating with the seller, everyone else has to stand down until you're done. He said it would be impossible to be mavar of this. Anytime someone would violate on HaMahapech, he would just say, you know what, I had a conversation, I bumped the seller in shul that morning, and we started talking. I started talking first. That's his reason. So the Chazal therefore made a clear guideline. Meeting of the minds is something which is much easier. It happened or it didn't happen. It's much more clearly defined, much easier to prove. Now this Svara is a pella. Since when do we find the halacha that we're going to create a gather of meeting of the minds? Why? To make life easier for Dayanim. So when you come to it in Torah, it's easier to prove who's right and who's wrong. Again, Dayanim get very little sympathy. Why are we now creating a whole gather for this? The answer is, this goes back to Yasher V'Toiv. Even in Timsa Loimer, Yasher V'Toiv would say, once the conversation starts, everyone should stand down. If this is impractical, if it's something which you can never prove, and now you're opening a license, anyone can violate these halachas, there's no way to prove he is violating, he's not violating, that he did start, he didn't start, you're not accomplishing anything. Yasher V'Toiv, let's stick to a more clearly defined and more easily verifiable gather, which will make things much more clear. And this is a secondary reason. The ikar reason that the Mordechai writes is say that the Michael. If the moment one person started negotiating, that it would be usher for anyone to interfere. Everyone else would have to stand back. What would happen? It would put sellers at a disadvantage. You market a property. If one nudnik who's trying to lowball you starts the negotiations, no one else is allowed to put in an offer. That would make it much harder to sell a property. It would be much harder to get a sense of the value. And you probably, if you were under any sort of time pressure to offload the property, you would sell it at a lower price because you simply couldn't get any offers. To go ahead and because of the Yasher V'Toiv of the buyer, to go ahead and set it up in a way where it'll hurt the seller, that doesn't make sense. And that's why Mordechai explains, you need a psikas damim, you need before this halach will apply. Now, why does psikas damim change anything? And now it's obvious that if you allow people, if we would do away with halach of animam, and we would say we encourage free market competition until the deal closes, every highest bid wins. If you allow that, certainly a seller would end up doing better because he may have agreed verbally to the price, but if we allow someone else to put in a higher bid, he'll end up with more money. So how could we go ahead and stell the din of animam? So the answer is, and the Matzah Avram speaks this out a little bit more clearly. He says, because again, we have to balance. On one hand, if the buyer's here, it's Yasher V'Toiv. Once he's here, once he invested effort, once he's about to close, leave for him, don't interfere. On the other hand, we don't want to cause it say the Meichel. So Chazal's gather was until the seller is satisfied, until he accepts a bid, when he's still pushing back, when he's still trying to get a better price, at that point we say the Pseidah to Meicher, his benefit outweighs the Yasher V'Toiv that's protecting the buyer, and anyone is free to put in a bid. The moment the seller says, good, I'm happy, send it to the attorney, we have a deal. Once he's accepted the deal, the fact that conceptually, maybe tomorrow someone will go ahead and can break this deal and do more, it's not called Pseidah Meicher. We're satisfied already. We're not hurting him. If he's okay with it, now Chazal can say, once you're okay with it, that you've accepted it, now we can go ahead and stop other people from bidding, even though, again, it conceptually will have some impact on the final price. Now, a similar concept, a similar idea. Let's go back. Let's jump to Marburger for a moment. So you have a steady relationship with someone, or your competitor has a steady relationship with someone, and you want to interfere with that. You want to lure that person away, have them do business with you. That is the sugya of Marburger, which is a machlokes. Some people are dantin in Marburger, some hold we're not dantin in Marburger. That's a big tumult. Now, what's the case of Marburger? So the case of the way the Mordechai brings down, he's talking about a goy, an akum, who is a marufio, an akum who is a steady client. What would be if that steady client is not a goy? It's a Jewish client. Does the concept of marufio apply? So here we have one of these fascinating cases. We have mamish svaras afuchas. The Marshal learns that the reason that the heter, and some type of point quotes this. What's the heter? What is the heter? The sheets that do not dan dina marufia, that say it's an open field, you can go after whatever clients you want. What's the heter? So basically Mordechai says, that when you're dealing with Ani Mahapech, when there's a deal, there's a meeting of the minds, the deal is going to close. There's a smichas das, no one else should interfere. Relationships, people do business, relationships come and go. So that the way the Marshal interprets that in this case means that it's very nice you've done business with this person for years. That's past history. You're only as good as your next quote. And if tomorrow someone comes along and gives a better deal, tomorrow someone changes their mind, then the relationship is over. And therefore, the reason why we're not dying din marufia is no one is samech das. You've done business with this guy for years. That perhaps that'll change. Perhaps the person is not samech das that this relationship will continue. Since there's no smichas das, it's not called taking away from him. It's not something that he had. Based on this, Sefer suggests, what if the marufia is a yid? What happens if you're doing business, you have a Jewish client, and that you've had a relationship with this Jewish client for years? If really everyone should hold, if there's a relationship, it would be also to interfere. What's the heter? The heter is only that the Goyish clients are not so loyal, they'll jump around, and therefore there's never a smichas das. Imkain, if you have a Jewish client, there's no concept of then perhaps everyone would agree that it would be usher to interfere with this marufia. Now, this is a tremendous chumrah. It's also very interesting. Apparently, back then, Jewish clients were easier to service and to keep happy than the Goyish clients. We said they're jumping from one to another. A yid, once you have him, that's it. Doesn't bargain you down, doesn't handle, doesn't chisel. You have a relationship that will go on indefinitely. So again, whether it does or doesn't apply in all cases today, yesh lodain b'davar. But this is the mahalach of the Marshal. Machzei Avram takes it exact opposite. The Chassam Sofer said that a Jewish client is more loyal and steady. Everyone agrees. Once you have one, it's protected. You know why the Mordechai says, he says, we have a guy doing business with someone, the idea, the concept of don't interfere, let your competitor stay with him exists. If the marufia is a yid, so what are we trying to do? We're trying to say, if he's doing business with your competitor, don't interfere, don't lure him away. And why are we saying that? Because your competitor has him. It's in the bag, that's his parnasa, that's who he does business with, it's not right to interfere. Why worry about your competitor? What about the client? What about the marufia? Right now, he's doing deals with your competitor, he's overpaying, he's getting lousy service, he's getting lousy quality. How are you going to lure him away? You're going to knock on his door, you're going to do a sales pitch, you're going to show how much money you're going to save him, you're going to show how much better quality your wares are. That's how he's going to, that's why you're hoping that he'll come to you. So, we can't go ahead, Chazal can't go ahead and say out to the Dina de Marufia, in order to protect your competitor who's doing business, let him continue. Fakir, that's going to hurt the Marufia. So by a yid, he says, Fakir, there's no tzad to be done in the Marufia. There we have to allow anyone to go ahead and try to lure him away because the Marufia will benefit. And in that case, we can the benefit of the Marufia or the benefit of the competitor cannot outweigh the loss to the Marufia, and that is the Machzeh Avram's mahalach in this sugya. Now, what are the Cholkim hold? The Cholkim hold. It's true, if Marufia would decide one day, I'm getting lousy service, I'm overpaying, and would call you up and say, listen, can you do better? Everyone agrees, that's most. There's no isser to service a Marufia. The isser is to go ahead, knock on the door, push your way in, and interfere with the relationship. If they come to you and they want to do better, they're not happy, they have every right to come to you. So in Cain, there's Malcolm to say, just like once there is a psikas damim, we're no longer worried about the say the mother because he got what he wanted. Marufia as well. If he's not happy, he'll pick up the phone, he'll call you, no problems. The point of Marufia is that Kolzman, he is happy. Kolzman, he's not shopping around. Okay, so maybe he doesn't know how good you are, etc. But we're not concerned about that. Kolzman, he on his own is happy. Good. So then we're not worried if he's not worried about his saved, if you will. He doesn't want to shop around. We don't have to go ahead and make it easier for him to find you or to find a better price. So this is another example where we have to weigh, or we have to take into account that on one hand, being machmer on the Marburger is helping or protecting the competitor's business, but at the same time, if the Marburger is Yisrael, it's hurting the client, and therefore we have this discussion or this machlokes whether we can or we cannot apply it in such a case. Now we mentioned earlier as well when it comes to pricing, you have a competitor coming from the outside, from a foreign country. So you have the right to, people in the city have the right to object that the city is for the local business people, someone should be coming in from the outside. Although the Rishonim point out, every additional competitor lowers the price. He's competing somehow, he's increasing the supply, simple economic supply and demand, there's more supply, the prices will drop. But nevertheless, the fact that everyone can save a couple of pennies on each transaction, the consumer at large, isn't itself enough to allow us or to be matter, to hurt or to take away parnasa from the seller, unless their goods are better. If their goods are better, they're higher quality, they're different, then it's a different story. Because again, we have to just balancing, Chazal have to balance whose rights are more important. Now, one interesting case, I'm not sure if it actually made it to the Marburger, but when we're dealing with competition, so our values and Chazal's values are not necessarily the exact same. And halacha, you'll see this filters out, and to some surprising consequences. If I would ask you, are bargains, are sales good or not? So I think everyone's first reaction is, everyone loves a bargain. We find in the Mishnah, there's actually machlokes. If there's a set price in the marketplace, is a seller allowed to slash prices and compete in that way? Yehuda says not. Yehuda says, if there's a set price in the marketplace, you want to go ahead, you want to import it from China, whatever it is, you're willing to go ahead and make it on volume, you slash your prices. Yehuda said that's awesome. The public is gaining. Fine, but that gain is coming at your competitor's expense and disrupting the entire marketplace just so that the consumers can save a couple of pennies of every gallon of milk. They that benefit, and Yehuda says it's awesome. The Chum says it's wonderful. It's mutzer. It's zachar l'toiv. So I'll be cautious. You would say, okay, so we hold like the Chum. We're free market. Believe in free market capitalists. It's a good thing. But the pell is, you look at the Gemara, what does the Gemara say? My time at the Rabbanon. My time at the Rabbanon, we understand. They're giving a bargain, they're slashing the prices. My time at the Yehuda. But no, the Gemara asks my time at the Rabbanon. And what does the Gemara answer? The Gemara that when you slash the prices, the retail prices, really no one's losing. Why? Because now all of the retailers will go back to the wholesaler and say, listen, the price is dropped, you have to sell it to us for less. And therefore, the consumer gains because the prices are lower. The retailers lose nothing because the suppliers, what? The margins will be the same. Now, what about the manufacturers? I don't know why. For some reason, they're not in the picture. We're not worried about them. I don't know why. But Zok the Panamiras, even the Chachamim only say you can slash prices because it'll drop the wholesale price, no one will lose. But in a case where that's not true, where a retailer is going to not slash the price and he's just going to hurt all of his competitors, Zok Lepanim Iris, the Chacham would agree to Yehuda. It's a bargain, very nice, but you're disrupting the entire marketplace. Now in America, that's a good thing. Disruption is good. That's how capitalism works. And certainly I'm not arguing with the economic theory. But in halacha, we have other values. And halacha, if we have a stable economy with everyone able to earn a parnasa and people are able to afford to buy it, the fact that you'll give them a bargain and now send all your competitors onto Time Shabbos is lav dafka a good thing. Now again, this is the Panamiris. Not saying this is halacha l'maisa, divrei chayim, and others argue. They say that no. They say that really you're always allowed to slash the price. Why does the Gemara need to come out and be a tiring? Very nice. Even even in Timsa Loimer, even we accept the Chachamim's halacha that you're allowed to slash pricing. It's a legitimate form of competition. But the Mishnah doesn't just say mutter. The Mishnah says Zachar l'toiv. This person should be remembered for good. A cut-nosed businessman who slashes the market, who undercuts the market, wipes out his competitors, it might be mutter, but Zachar l'toiv, this is a tremendous schus that he has. So on that, the Gemara says, no, the Kavir Tare, because this person is Tava Zachar l'toiv. Everyone's gaining. The consumers are paying less, competitors lose nothing. It's win-win situation, Zachar l'toiv. Without that, the Divrei Chaim says it's still mutter, because the Chachamim hold, I'm allowed to be I'm allowed to compete on price, that's legitimate. But to get carried away and say this person is mamash rashka bahag because he lowered the prices, he says no, it's just a business tactic. It's not something we're going to go ahead and we're going to get all excited over. Now, another case or another group of cases where the shiloh comes up is that we have on a mahapach, person's about to close on a deal, interfering is going to be awesome. We have the most basic machlokes is Rashi and Tosfos, and that is what happens if it's a mitzvah. If this is a unique deal that you can't find elsewhere, according to Tosfos, all bets are off, and whoever wants to get it can get it. Rashi, on the other hand, holds Onim Hafka applies even by Mitzvah and Hefker, even if this deal cannot be found elsewhere. The Marshal, and it's really explaining my Rick, has what seems to be a little bit of B'shara. He says normally he holds like Tosfos. Normally, if something's a Mitzvah, something is Hefker, it can't stop me from trying to grab the deal. Why? Because I can't find it somewhere else. When it's a Mekachul Memkar, it's full price. So why should I interfere with your deal? Let me go somewhere else and get it. If it's a hefker, it's mitzvah, if it's a unique opportunity, I can't find it elsewhere. So what am I going to do? I can't find it elsewhere. I'm allowed to go over here. Dr. Marshal, my Rick holds, it depends. Normally he holds like Tosfos, if it's hefker, you're allowed to interfere. But there's one exception. If the first person invested money to get this deal, then you have to protect it. And even though it's a hefker, even though it's a mitzvah, even though the second person can't find it somewhere else, still, on your Marburger will apply. Now, what kind of shor is this? Manushach. If according to Tosfos, if the whole svar on Marburger Yashar Toiv is I can't find it elsewhere, so you can't. So I'm allowed to come here. It's only if I can go down the block. Why should I interfere with yours? Then why is this case different? The answer again is we're back to Yashar Toiv. You don't own it. It's not an inherent source to fight over every deal. It's Yashar Toiv. So normally your Yashar Toiv, the fact that you got here first, can't tell me not to take it if I'm not going to have any other options. You got here first, I got here second. I'm allowed to take it as well because it's a hefker mitzvah. That's in a regular case. If the first person is actually out money, he spent money to get to and invested in the deal, and now my coming is going to cause a loss of that investment. So even I can't find it elsewhere. I'm mechatis to go ahead and cause another yid loss. That's that's not so pashut, and that's something which the Marshal holds you can stop. Similarly, there's a famous base Ephraim that says that if you sell your chametz to a guy, and then after Pesach you want to buy it back. So today the story is you sell it to the guy, you sell the chametz for the full price. He gives $10 down payment. After Pesach, if he wants to keep everyone's schnapps and Cheerios and his chametz that attached to his kalim, so pull in a shamoy, he'll pay the other $4 million that he owes for the chametz. Back then, what they did, the mechiras were in a way more real. What they did is they went to a guy and they sold him as a bargain. They gave him a good deal, and that way the guy wanted to buy the entire city's chametz. So what would be after Pesach? The guy says, "Hey, I have this great bargain. Let me keep it. Let me keep the schnapps." So the particular case that the Beis Ephraim is dealing with is not just that the guy decided on his own to keep it. He wasn't able to afford the entire city schnapps. What happened is another yid went over to the guy and said, "Listen here, you bought all of the schnapps from my competitor. He sold it to you at 20 cents on the dollar, knowing you don't have 20 cents. So after Pesach, he'll get it back. I'll tell you what, I'll give you 30 cents and I'll buy it off you." So after Pesach, when the Yid comes who had sold the chametz, wants to go, comes to the guy and says, okay, sell it back to me. The guy says, nothing doing. I have a better deal someone else, and he didn't want to sell it to him. So the Beis Ephraim has a whole shuv about that, and he ends up saying, in that case, nothing doing. He says the first person is called ani mahapach, and he says you can even be koifa, even b'diavad, we're koifa you to sell it to the first person. Since when are we koifa? It's a mitzvah. You have all the Hachanah in the book. So again, the Beis Ephraim goes through the cheshvan. But part of his taina is that when there's a random thing on the street, no one has any shaykhs to it. I'm coming to buy it. You're coming to buy it. So then we have to balance first, second, mitzvah, not mitzvah. If I had it, and this represents a loss, again, not a loss in the question of mishpat, you sold it, but something that I had it already, and I'll be tev, I expected to get it back, that's a whole different piece. That's a whole different, that's a whole different shayla, and that's why the old Gedarim don't necessarily apply. Just want to end off with one simple case. What? Okay. People generally don't complain so bitterly if we end a few minutes early.
We're gonna have questions.
So I just want to bring up probably the simplest of cases you can have, and just shmooze and learning. Again, everyone in Mitzvah Hashem will be going through the sugya about the review next week, but it's something that they keep in mind and somewhat with their chavrusas. You're on your way to an important meeting in the city. Naturally, you're stuck in more traffic than you expected. You're running a bit late, and as you're passing the building, you notice, corner of your eye, across the street, a car pulls out of the parking spot. Now, you notice that in front of that spot, about 25 feet in front of it, there's a car patiently waiting with their parking lights on. But you're desperate, you're in a rush. So as soon as the car pulls out of the spot, you swing or you, don't worry about the traffic, pull right into the spot, and you manage to slip in just before the fellow, backs into it. What is halacha? Was this permitted or not? So, l'chayra, it's self-evident. You don't own parking spaces in Manhattan. Even if someone is there, sees it, and is about to get it, he doesn't own it, he wasn't quite it, there's no kinyan. So what is the sugya? The sugya l'chayra is, ani mahapeh b'charara. That first car was being mahapeh b'charara. It was waiting patiently for this spot to open up. He was there first. Mahapech is not very well defined with hefker, but parked right in front of it with your parking lights on in reverse certainly is going to be considered mahapech. So l'chayra, if you swoop in and grab it, he can't bring you to Bezdin, but l'chayra, you're over on it would be nikra Rosh. Now, is this true? So l'chayra, this is ein l'cha hefker u'mitzia b'gdei mizu. Finding a parking spot in Manhattan is a yikar mitzias. Doesn't happen very, very frequently. So by a davar shel hefker, does ani mahapech apply? It's a machlokes rishonim. According to Rashi, nothing doing. It applies. Even hefker u'mitzia, it's going to be awesome. According to Taisvis, since it's hefker u'mitzia, there's no ani mahapech. So even though that fellow was there first, l'chayra, it's perfectly okay to go ahead and grab the slot. Is this true? So let's break this down a little bit more carefully. A parking spot is hefker, right? Maybe now it's hefker. Doesn't belong to anybody. But there are a fair amount of parking spots in the city. Maybe not enough, but there's more than one. You have a davar shel hefker, but if you go down 2 or 3 blocks, you can find another one. Does Taisvis heter of hefker mitzvah apply? Lav dafka. There's actually there's a fascinating issue from Bahirus Nelson. He wants to know your shemitah. You're going through an Esther paradise, and you see a beautiful Rebbe Esther with a gartel. It's perfect. It's clean. You're about to grab it. Someone else comes, stops the Esther. Do you have a heter of Taisvis? It's hefker. It might be hefker, but Zakta Bahirus Nelson. So are all this regular Eretz Yisrael. Go down to the next paragraph. So even though normally the heter is, you don't find HaRav of Shahefker in the street every day. But if you have Metzias where this is a double Shahefker, which you can find all over, you're fishing. There are a lot of hefker fish in the river. You don't have the heter. So the fact that you can find spots, if you circle around for a couple of minutes, you'll find another spot, even though Choshen Mishpatik it's a double Shahefker, but you lav dafka will have this heter. Now, at the same time, I don't know, you're late for your meeting. Now, the fact that you circle around for another half hour, you'll find another spot. Is that called, does that mean it's not a hefker, it's not a mitzvah? L'chayra, when we deal with hefker and mitzvah, it's subjective. Or the doesn't have to be an absolute hefker, an absolute mitzvah. It means for you, you need this, you can't find it elsewhere. The fact that in 40 minutes you can find another parking spot doesn't help you when you're already 10 minutes late for a meeting. And you'll see in Simon Reish Lamed Zayin, it talks about a bar mitzvah, there where the person claims it's a mitzvah for me. I own the one house, getting the property next door, it may not be a good price for anyone else. It may not be a unique or special deal for anyone else, but if for me, it's the only adjacent property available, that's enough to qualify as a mitzvah. So you see, it is subjective. And for this person, he can't find an equivalent somewhere else. So then, l'chayra, he's going to have that heter. So l'chayra, we're back to a machlokes Rashi and Tosfos. So far, so good. We have a couple of problems with this. The first is, according to Rashi, it'll be asr. Now, is it always asr? What about? I would submit. It depends what kind of car it is. If the car that's pulling in is a jalopy, it's probably awesome. If it's a Lexus, what you did is probably okay. Why? Because according to Rashi holds even by hefker mitzvah ani mahapach. What about asher mahapach? So Rashi explains that when a poor person is trying to get a Danish, if you grab it from him, what's going to be? He's starving. There's nothing to eat. Ani mahapach says even by mitzvah, leave it for him. If you have an asher who comes after to breakfast, there's one donut left, you grab it. What's he going to do? If he's hungry, he'll go to the store and buy himself his own bagel. And buy his own Danish. He doesn't need this. He'll pay for it to buy it somewhere else. So Imkain, if you want to cut off a jalopy, where if you grab the spot, he's at sorrow, so we don't know where he's going to park. Then according to Rashi, you're stuck. On the other hand, if it's a Lexus, so what's going to be if you be at the spot? Well, into the parking garage across the street. He'll pay a few dollars. He'll be fine. At a cost, that's fine. Rashi says by asher mahapach doesn't have this issue. So if you want to cut off or grab someone's spot, the jalopy, then it'll be usher. You have to leave it for him. If it's a fancier car already, according to Rashi, it should be fine. But let's think about it. Is this really true? According to Rashi, by a mitzvah, you have ani mahapach, and that's why by a jalopy you got to protect it. What about the case of peah? Tosfos asks by peah why it's mavur. There's no aniyim are running after the peah. He says there's no ani mahapach. It must be because it's hefker mitzvah. What does Rashi learn? So some of the Rishonim explain. The Ramban says Rashi holds normally by hefker there is ani mahapach. Why is this different? Peah, every ani in the world, what do they live with? They live with matnas aniyim. Every ani knows that there's peah in the field, and they're all busy during the harvest season. They're all busy circling around and around looking for peah. When everyone's circling around, just because one ani is a little bit closer, everyone's mahapach with it at the same time, and that's why there's no ani mahapach. Imkain, if you have a parking spot, probably in Manhattan at any given time, there are dozens of people circling around any block trying to find that spot. Then even according to Rashi, then there's a reason why there's no ani mahapach, even though it's after. So to come out, you will not have ani mahapach. According to Tosfos, because it's a mitzvah. According to Rashi, either if it's a Lexus because it's an asher mahapach, even without that, you have the fact that Akol Mahapkin Ba, so L'chayra L'kuli Alma should be fine. Now, before you go ahead and go and grab the spot from the fellow and tell them that your rabbi told you that it's okay. Yesh Ladain at the fourth part of the sukkah. So the fourth part of the sukkah that gets a little bit less publicity is the case of Ani Menake for Rosh Zayis. If you have a person in Ani who's on top of the Zayis, he's knocking down the olives, and his plan is when he knocks them down, he'll go down and he'll take it. So if you go ahead and you go into the tree and you grab it for yourself, that is Aser, that's Gezel, that's the other part of the sukkah. Now, the Achroinim all struggle. What happened to Adi Mahapich? What about the fact that it's Hefker? And the basic answer is that it's one thing when a person's Mahapich. Going around, you're negotiating on a deal, you're trying to find the Charara. Those are all certain levels of tircha. When the Ani climbs on top of the Zayas, that's a much higher level of tircha. And the way some Achronim point out is there's certain danger involved. You're on top of a tree, climbing the Zayas tree, so there's a certain element of sakana involved to get the Zayas. Someone is moiser nefesh for something, leave it for him. That has the Dr. Shalom. What?
One that serves nefesh together is tircha involved.
Mm-hmm.
So why isn't tircha and then bang around and playing this?
Okay, that's where I get. So that the levels of serious now. Now others learn that it needs the amount of tircha where there's a smichas das. You've done everything that could be done. It's in the bag. Ani, who's on top of the zayas, knocking down a tree, knocking down olives, doesn't dream in his mind there's any chance that he's not going to get these olives. You don't know. He did everything that needs to be done to get it. He climbed the tree. He banged it. He did everything that could be done. There's a complete smichas das. Now, based on that, yesh ladain in the parking spot. Now, to say that he risked his life and put his life in danger for this spot, okay, I don't know. New York City today, the subway is probably sakana. I don't know if the streets are right hit that level just yet. So if you need a gather of sakana, that's not so mistaver. I mean, Mashal talks about kol drachim b'cheskas sakana. I don't know if that will apply today.
Maybe at night,
you'll have to judge each case for itself. On the other hand, if the point is a smichas das, that you did everything that humanly can be done, and you got to the point where no one dreams that you're not going to get it, and that someone would have the chutzpah coming in, sit there under the olive tree and start picking up the olives that you went up to pick. If that's the case, if that's the gather, over here, where the person is sitting there, 25 feet in front of the spot with his blinkers on, he's in reverse. I think under most circumstances, there's a smichas das. No one thinks someone will come in and have the chutzpah and go ahead and chop it away from him. So even if we get around the Dani Mahapich issue, we still ultimately will end up, at least according to some shitas, with the problem of Ani Menake for Rosh Zayis. Either way, if you do this, you probably come out to find 4/tires. So it is not a good idea. But I'll call upon him. This is just an example of a very simple case, which on the surface you'll think one way, but as you spend the time to go through the sugya, go through the Rishonim, and not just the words of Rishonim, looking at Hefker and Mitzia, but delve into it a little bit of the Havana, of understanding it, then you'll come out with a whole new perspective. And in Mitzvah Hashem, I'll see everyone in Yerushalayim, where as you go through the sugya yourself, you'll come back to me and tell me what your maskana was, whether you agree and disagree, and we'll do a little bit of tumul and listen to Raisa. Thank you.
Going back to the Marburger case, which seems to be applicable to a lot of modern day business. So, let's assume there is a Marburger and you have a contact with the client for many years. And continuing business is not allowed to advertise in publications which are designed to reach these clients.
No, so the place can allow general advertising. For the primary reason is as follows. And really there are two reasons. The first reason is you're advertising for the general public. To say you can't do any business activity because maybe a Marufia will see is a tremendous number. But more than that, the idea of Marufia is there is a loyal, steady client. If all it takes is noticing and advertising in a newspaper or a magazine or sponsorship of whatever it is, and suddenly he's out, suddenly he's calling you and wants to know what can you do for him, what's your pricing, come down, let's meet. That's not a marufia. That's not a loyal. That means that person is shaky to begin with. So in general, for example, people want to make cold calls. If all it takes is the person says, hi, I sell this, and the person says, yes, please, let's meet. To be closer from marufia, if that's where he's holding, that means he's looking around. He may have done business for the last 20 years. This is not going to continue for much longer. And it wouldn't be marufia. It's when the person says, no, I'm not interested, he slams the door in your face. And you, like a good salesman, wedge your foot in to make sure that he can slam it, and you push and you push, and then you try another way and call your other contact. Then you have a real shaila of marufia. But if all it takes is a simple phone call, and suddenly he wants to know what you can do for him, it's probably not a marufia in the first place.
Okay, so this poses a question. It's not a request for an answer because obviously it can't be answered regular. That means that the employee, a senior employee leaving a business with a list of clients that have been there. Now, obviously, he didn't solicit them. That's one side of it. But let's we consider them to be quote unquote his clients. That already has several shadows here. I think I don't expect an answer because this is a more complicated question. And just putting this on the floor for everyone to think about these type of questions, and hopefully we'll get a chance to discuss it in more detail. Okay, for my side tonight. Thank you.